it is not recognized very much in our society, in our world, that human beings have an inner world and an outer world. We have a world, we have a side of ourselves that needs to act, manifest, to take care of our family, to earn our living, to accomplish things, to invent, to travel, to live, to take care of the earth, to do all sorts of things which human beings can really do remarkably. But there's this inner part, and it's not just the psychological desires and things, but there's an inner life within us which we have lost touch with entirely. There's a real self inside there, a real I that's covered over. It hasn't been born, it's not able to appear. And that's our real identity. The thing we call ourselves has been culturally conditioned. It's not that it's bad altogether, it's just a cultural cultural product of an interaction of outside influences in my own mind and emotional nature. That cultural psychological product, you can call it ego if you like, but that has so many loaded meanings nowadays, but it's the surface self, if you like, that we need. We damn well need it in our life. It's important. But there's this other self that we're born to come in touch with, to open to, that really gives life meaning. Without that, we just are like little puppets. We're born, we're conditioned, we get our money, we get our food, we make our babies, and we die. That's it.
Discover what is false. And that means socially, economically, in all aspects of life, including psychology and the self. If you manage to do that, then you're actually cleaning away the briars that stand in the way of the path to this revelation. But that revelation will be an independent one that's done in the privacy of oneself. Discovering the self can't be done in any form of collectivized way. You can't do it in ashrams. You can't do it in churches. You can't do it in think tanks, and you can't do it in round table meetings. It's absolutely a personal, private thing. In fact, you can't do it in families, and even so, you can't do it even in relationships. People have to think about this deeply. You only do it in relationship with yourself.
self-realization. The realization of your true self. The recognition that you are a godlike immortal being. Now that's what the people out there and those who watch and those who listen have got to understand. You are an infinite spark of divinity yourself. Yourself. Yourself.
Lord, we want all that you have, all that you have.
Yes.
And Lord, if it blows our little minds, let them be blown. Father, we want all of what you have, all of what you have. We thank you.
Maybe no one has ever told you before, and I'm going to tell you now, that you had better take a shocking look at what you are doing with yourself every hour of the day. What you're doing is horrible beyond description, and you don't see it. You can hardly stand the sight of yourself at times, can you? You know that. Let's face it. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's start right now. To make up our minds, we're not going to kid ourselves anymore. Right now. The price is too much. You've been paying it too long. I'm telling you how to stop paying it. How you stop paying is to understand that everything you do is wrong because it starts from a mind that's operating wrong. Where did you get all your ideas about yourself? Where did you get the ideas of what you should do, of where you should go, and how you succeed? You picked them up from a mad world. Can't you understand that? Can't you begin to understand where you've got all this wrong direction you're heading in?
If the person doesn't listen to the demands of his own spiritual and heart life and insists on a certain program, you're going to have a schizophrenic crack-up. The person has put himself off-center. He has aligned himself with a programmatic life, and it's not the one the body's interested in at all. And the world's full of people who have stopped listening to themselves.
You know, we have, the psyche has two conditions, two important conditions. The one is the environmental influence,
Yes.
and the other is the given fact of the psyche as it is born.
You have found your place, my son. You come like a lamb. But don't forget, you have a wolf in you as well. Look, can you find the force to enable these two quite opposite lives to live together in yourself? Listen carefully. This will not happen by itself. It is not enough just to think about it, to dream, to wait. At any moment, the wolf can devour the lamb, and you must learn what it means to become responsible.
We need to be able to live that way, and live it all the time. But very, very few people on earth today are able to live according to their religion. The reason for this is obvious. We are so dominated by outside forces that there's no room for the inner life. Even those who want to live according to the teaching of their religion cannot do so because their inner self or soul has been closed up and shut in by the pressure of worldly forces. The creative power working through the mind of man has produced the modern world. It is utterly different from the world of our ancestors. We have learned how to release vast sources of energy, and we've learned how to make wonderful machines. We can travel around the world in a few days. All this has brought humanity under the action of immensely strong material forces. We do not dominate these forces, they dominate us. But there's no going back. Life on Earth is getting more and more complicated every generation. We cannot carry on our lives without great organizations, which inevitably take away the freedom of individuals. All these factors have produced a situation in which people have lost contact with their inner life. This is the chief reason why there are so many mentally disturbed people in the world, why people need tranquilizers and sedatives, why we live in a state of constant nervous tension and anxiety.
They are the sources of what we call neurosis, neurotic symptoms. The most general neurotic symptom is restlessness. That isn't yet looked at in modern time because everybody is so restless. It isn't looked at to be a neurosis, to be restless, but it is actually. Primitive man or the Hindu or the Chinese criticize the white race very much for being constantly restless. And you can see that those are those energies which, because we are not connected with the dream world, with the unconscious, we have a surplus of bottled up energy which makes us fuss around all the time. Or it can take the form of a kind of all-pervading anxiety.
The neurosis in people, the psychosis in people, the dysfunction in people, and therefore in their relationships and in society, is based on the fact that man doesn't even have a sense of self. And the ego that he's working with is also not personal. It's a social ego defined by all the people around you. We modify our sense of self and our ego identity based on the approval ratings of other people. And we do this unconsciously, we're not even aware of it.
We confuse ourselves as living organisms, which are one with this whole universe, with something we call our personality. Now, what is our personality? Our personality is what we call our image of ourselves, and also our thought about ourselves, our idea of ourselves. This is the person. In other words, what people meet and understand, and what I understand as Alan Watts, is a big act which is not really me. Because in the image of Alan Watts, there are not all my unconscious processes, both psychological and physical. The construction of my brain is not contained in the concept Alan Watts, and the concept Alan Watts does not contain the inseparable relationships which I have with all the rest of the universe. And therefore that concept is a fraud.
Anyone who's a real occultist or magician or teacher will tell you that actually before you can ever even approach this strange nucleated state or join the feminine and the masculine together and the higher man and the lower man, before you can come to that state, you must first participate in a chemical divorce. See, it's the opposite of what we have on life. First we marry, then we divorce. Mystically, it's a reverse. Divorce from what? From all that is wrong, all that is false, all that is corrupt. Until you end in your life all the things that are not true, you can forget about any type of enlightenment. Divorce from all that is false is very painful and traumatic to the ego of man, because the ego is well happy with all of that. The ego has made its home here, and now you're telling it to burn down its shack. Because look, I just built this thing.
You can't transform yourself. You can't make yourself sane. You can't make yourself loving. You can't make yourself unselfish. And yet it's absolutely necessary that we be that way. It's absolutely necessary. If we are going to hand over the direction of nature to nature, which is what it comes to, it's absolutely necessary that we let go of ourselves, and it can't be done. Not by anything that we call doing it, acting, willing, or even just accepting things. You can't do it. Why? Because you don't really exist as that kind of a separate ego or personality. It's just an idea based on a phony feeling. So when it comes down to it, it's shocking news for us, for the human race, for our pride. You're only making a mess by trying to put things straight. You're trying to straighten out a wiggly world, and no wonder you're in trouble. So you can't do anything. So you can't transform yourself. And what can you do? What happens then if you actually realize you've come to a dead end? And the human race has come to a dead end, in my opinion. What then?
But inside every human being there is another self, the real self or soul. Even if it is shut up so that we've forgotten that it exists, it's still there. All that is needed is that it should be brought to life and made strong and conscious. Then that real human self can stand up to all the pressures of the modern world.
You see, when I say self, then you must not think of I myself, because that is only your empirical self, and that is covered by the term ego. Ego, yes. But when it is matter of the self, then it is matter of a personality that is more complete than the ego.
Each human being is a galaxy. Within our skins and in the various structures of our body are as many worlds, planets, and mysteries as anywhere in space. We have an inner space that is filled with light, just as the space in which we live. This space lives in us as we live in it. This space, which is ourselves, consequently represents a pattern that we must all follow. In order to fulfill the purpose of our personal lives, we must make sure that this space is maintained properly. We must be certain that we do not betray or falsify this space content in ourselves. We must become good and faithful overseers of this mystery of the body.
Will you look at me and say I'm sacred? And then when you look in the mirror, find nothing sacred at all? What caused you to see me as sacred, unless something was inside you already that could recognize it? There must be something in you already which is sacred. God invites you to experience that sacredness. It's not found outside yourself.
When you see a flower in a field, it's really the whole field that is flowering, because the flower couldn't exist in that particular place without the special surroundings of the field that it has. You only find flowers in surroundings which will support them. So in the same way, you only find human beings on a planet of this kind, with an atmosphere of this kind, with temperature of this kind, supplied by a convenient neighboring star. And so, just as the flower is a flowering of the field, I feel myself as a personing, a manning, peopling the whole universe. In other words, I seem, like everything else, to be a center, a sort of vortex, at which the whole energy of the universe realizes itself, comes alive. A sort of aperture through which the whole universe is conscious of itself.
drive of life in itself always comes from an invisible spiritual level. And I believe that the technical world, they discovered the secret of the atom in a technical way. They can develop shuttles to the moon, but there is no answer to the very early beginning of that impulse itself. Man has to climb or to go in himself in an inner development to find the secret key. I know where I come from. I know why I am here, and I know my destiny.
Unad Who Production.
Seeker, I've been searching low and high. I won't get what I'm after till the day I die. I asked Bobby Dylan, I asked the Beatles, I asked Timothy Leary. They call me the seeker. I've been searching low and high. I won't get what I'm after till the day I die. People tend to hate me 'cause I never smile. As I ransack their homes, they wanna shake my hand. Focusing on nowhere, investigating miles. I'm a seeker, I'm a really desperate man. To get what I'm after till the day I die.